and welcome to the history of roller coasters, and this is for beginners, and I am your host, Just Talking, who now has a lisp because I've recently got braces. But let's move on to the beginning of the story. So this starts in Russia, more specifically the then capital of St. Petersburg. And of course, this started with specially built mounds of snow which were supported by a few wooden structures, and people would decide to sled down these for the thrill of gravity working on them and also the speed. Of course, these were called Russian mountains, or Ketelnaya Gorka, which does mean mountain slide, I believe. And this featured 70 to 80 foot drops that would be at a 50-degree angle, which is actually relatively steep and would generate some impressive speeds, especially given the height and the time taken to get down there. Then, Catherine II, otherwise known as Catherine the Great, decided that she wanted to ride these roller coasters all year round. And of course, with that, she decided to make them out of grooved wooden tracks, which are pretty familiar from the picture that I'm displaying, because they're very much used in children's train track toys. And this was of course built in 1784 in her gardens near St. Petersburg. And in 1817, Parc Beaujon opened in France, of course, hence the name, and most of the roller coasters consisted of a cart being pulled up to the top of a hill and then released, usually in a figure-of-8 design. Then a vertical loop track appeared, which was called a centrifugal railway. Of course, these consisted of one person being catapulted through a loop and was a recipe for whiplash. Then, over in America during this time period, in the state of Pennsylvania, March Shunk Gravity Railroad, which I believe is the way you pronounce that first part, was built for coal delivery in 1850 to the nearby town. And of course, this was originally just for that, and no one would ride it. But then, in 1872, it became the Gravity Road, and many other railway companies across America decided to copy the idea. When of course they weren't using it very much for coal deliveries, and it was often a really great way of amusement for both staff and locals that were utilising the coal railways. Then, of course, Lamarcus Adner Thompson, he then opened the first 1884 switchback railway. And of course, for those of you who don't know what a switchback railway is, it's two tracks that are next to each other with a few bounces, ups and downs. And once, of course, the riders have scaled to the top of this, platform, they'll get on the coaster train, and then they will go down these series of bumps, and then they will stop, go on a switch track, and go all the way back to the beginning. And of course, these were usually about 600 feet long. This model in particular, I believe, was. And of course, these are incredibly popular. But another thing to note is that none of these, as of yet, actually have restraints on them. You wouldn't really see that until the 1900s, which is very shocking because by the 1900s, things had already, started to get things like loops, and they were very much experimenting with how fast things could go. And then, of course, in 1885, a full circuit was built utilising the first wooden chain lift. And of course, this meant that people didn't have to walk, dozens of feet up into a structure, sit down, and then go down to the bottom. It meant that they could go from ground level up to a height using the chain lift and go around the full completed circuit as so. And chain lifts are very popular today still, but also you can use things like launches and lifts as well to take you vertically up. Then, between this time period and of course the modern day, you have the first vertical looping coaster that really people have documented and known about. And this was built in 1895 by Lena Beecher. And he's known for a few different innovations, but particularly this. And it was called the Flip Flap Railway and was established in the Sea Lion Park in Brooklyn, New York, similar to Coney Island. And once again, this was a recipe for whiplash. Of course, it was quickly taken down along with another model that was built similar to the flip-flop railway, because that was exactly what happened. People either weren't secured in properly and would hit their heads, and they'd just get whiplash in general from how tight and small the vertical loop was. But of course, even when people would tell stories of whiplash on this ride, people still went and rode it because we're humans, we're stupid sometimes. And then in 1919, John Miller, who you might know from his work in the Big Dipper at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, he developed upstop wheels. And basically, these are the most important things in roller coaster history, apart from the actual conception of roller coasters in themselves in the form of Russian mountains. Because, of course, these are what allows you to go incredibly fast and go over some impressive hills, because it secures the track to the train. That should be the other way around. But it allows for when you go over a hill that's quite steep, particularly shown in Big Dipper, for you to not fly off of the tracks, because of course you have a wheel on top and a wheel to the side and a wheel to the bottom. And of course the upstop wheel is those two final wheels usually, particularly the side friction wheels as they're otherwise called. Then, of course, Cyclone opened in 1927 in Coney Island, which is relatively close to the Sea Lion Park. And this is a still fully functional roller coaster today, and it's one of the most, famous historical roller coasters in the whole country and world. It's just a really famous roller coaster, and of course, it's held up, it's aged relatively well, and it does utilise the upstop wheels and, of course, newer restraining technology. And then, of course, the Great Depression hit in America, and that massively reduced the demand for roller coasters, because a lot of the development was happening over there because, of course, there was a lot of investors and they were very much into their public entertainment and amusement during the 19 and 1800s, especially with America being a very growing and developing country. They definitely were the ones to innovate at first, but of course Europe behind the scenes was pulling all the strings, and of course had the founding ingredients for the roller coaster. So for the modern roller coasters of today, you do of course have in the 1959 opening of the Matterhorn bobsled at the Disneyland park, and this became the first tubular steel-tracked coaster. And you might be thinking, what the hell's that? So basically, as you can see from the picture, basically two metal tubes along a normal sort of train track style track, and of course the wheels are attached below, above, and to the side of that. Not every single one needs a side friction wheel, especially if, there's nothing on the side for it to hit into or anything like that, and it's normally just twists and turns and minor dips. Not every single coaster requires a side friction wheel, never make that misconception, I suppose. And basically, that is a main sort of formula for nowadays coaster tracks. If you look at the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, you will definitely see that, obviously upscaled version of the tubular steel track. It's in every single steel coaster really nowadays. Even in suspended coasters, it's literally just that design flipped on its head and made bigger. Then, of course, in 1975, this is another innovating coaster. The Corkscrew opened at Knott's Berry Farm, and it featured new over-the-shoulder restraints which were made by Aerodynamics, otherwise known as Aero Developments, and they are notably known for making the big one and also Revolution. And of course, this is a massive step up. Of course, over-the-shoulder restraints allow for a lot more inversions, and also, in some cases, a bit more force and speed, because, of course, if you are going at a decent G-force, you don't want to be just slipping up out with the lap bar restraint. And, of course, these are seen on suspended coasters, such as Nemesis, and also your, other normal sort of coasters that just invert, such as Colossus at Fort Park. And now, of course, coasters can invert, launch, and suspend, and you can now flex your history knowledge on coasters. Of course, for those of you who don't know what any of these words mean, of course, inversions are where you go upside down. It's any element in a roller coaster where you go upside down. And a launch is where the train is propelled at a certain speed by either like a hydraulic launch where you use water pressure powered pumps, or of course an LSM linear synchronous motor launch, which is powered by magnets. And of course, I really do hope that you've learned something from this. And of course, not many people actually know that it came from Russia. And of course, I think that's a very valuable part of history. Because you wouldn't expect it, of all places, for it to come from somewhere in Europe. You definitely think, with how popularised in media, it would come from America, but in fact it doesn't. Most of the innovation took place in France and Russia. And of course, a lot of the things in France, originated from a lot of ideas that were born in the UK and England. So very much America just kind of took an idea and blew it up and then sent it back to Europe, and Europe obviously expanded from what they had as well. So yeah, that's really it for this video. I really do hope you've enjoyed it and you've learned something. I hope that now, if you go to any sort of gathering, you can definitely flex on people that you know that it was Russian mountains. And of course, for another fun fact, actually, I can tell you that it is actually the word for roller coaster in a lot of languages. But of course, in Russian, the usual phrase for Russian mountains or roller coasters is actually American mountains. And in French, I believe it's La Montagne Russe, so flex on that if you want. But I really do hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm very sorry for the lisp due to my braces. I'm hoping that it will go away, but for the foreseeable future, this is how I'm going to sound. Of course, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. And now more than ever, it's important because we are nearly at 100 subs, and of course I'm open to any, offerings and suggestions for what I should do for my 100 sub special. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this. This was just talking. Bye bye.